to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe.
In this episode, we talk with Laura Williams, a 21st century learning specialist in Iowa, about how she boops education for the better and the challenging times that drove her to write a book that will be coming out soon.
All right, here we go. Well, Laura, thank you for being here with us tonight. For our listeners that don't know who you are, what's your elevator pitch? Like, who are you? Where are you from? And what's your role in education?
Okay, I love it. Okay, so I'm Laura Williams, and I am from Iowa. I'm in Iowa right now, and I am a 21st century learning specialist. I know it sounds fancy. I mostly focus my work on those 21st century skills and how do we naturally, authentically go about them. I work for the Iowa Area Education Agencies, so AEAs is what we call them. And we support school districts. And in my role, I support school districts all over Iowa, doing professional learning around two things. Two big things.
Two big things.
My big rocks. So authentic learning and agile in education. So two big sort of concepts that we train educators, administrators in to what we call up the ante for kids.
I love it. Would you unpack being agile or having agility in education? To me, it sounds really awesome, and I want to be part of it. I want to have my kids be agile. So what would that look like?
Yeah, so it's kind of a hot term right now. I feel like, at least I'm hoping it's spreading like wildfire. So agile originally it came from software development companies, and it's two things. It's kind of a mindset. And that mindset and beliefs kind of are attached to different frameworks of project management. So it's organizing people and managing projects. And so my experience with it was, it was actually a computer science academy, a school that was exploring the IT realm of things, and students got trained in Scrum. So Scrum project management, and they were doing some really cool things with the Scrum board. They were managing their projects. They were talking to each other. The culture is huge. And so teamwork is pivotal for these projects to be successful. And so there are protocols that you would engage your teams in to better communicate and work together. And I can kind of give you what that looks like the cycle of it. But essentially, I immediately saw the connection because it was the need that I needed to support schools with authentic projects. So PBL on steroids is the best way I know how to describe that. And so how do we take this authentic to industry project management framework and bring it to the classroom to operationalize kids working in teams to get a project done? And for that matter, an agile classroom, it doesn't have to be a project. It can be traditional activities that you would find in a classroom, any given classroom across the United States. You could put that into what I call an agile operating system. And it's very it's cyclical. So if you've heard of the term iterations, it's an iterative learning cycle. So it's planning. So what are we going to learn today? It's doing. So getting into it and then differentiating how that looks. In some cases, kids are autonomous and can choose how they want to go about that learning, or it's more scaffolded, which I would imagine in elementary. And in elementary, it's more scaffolded and teacher directed, but with some possibility for choice. And then this is kind of where I've kind of fallen in love with the sort of the Scrum cycle, is that there is a review and a retrospective. So
the
planning
piece.
Yeah, it's planning, doing. There's some check-ins along the way with the teacher and the groups, and then there is a review of the quality of what they did for that learning sprint, and then the retrospection, and that's all about the learner. So how did you learn? What worked, what didn't work? How did you work with other people? What worked, what didn't work? And then we're going to refine what we've learned in that conversation and add it to the next learning cycle. So it's like a continuous improvement of working with people, working out those bugs, like bringing attention to, it's almost like that metacognitive level. We say we want kids to think about thinking,
Yes.
but we don't build in that layer of like thinking about working with others and why I thought the way I did and why I did what I did. So it gives you that sort of space in the day to have that conversation when you build in that sort of agile learning cycle, if that makes sense. I almost like, I need to show you pictures because like my words alone can't do it justice, I feel like.
Well, it almost sounds like the engineering cycle, but the engineering cycle of thinking. And
Ooh, I like
so
that.
so I'm kind of curious because you said organizing people, managing people. And I did an activity with my kids today called the Marshmallow Challenge, where you get the spaghetti sticks and you know what I'm talking about. You're shaking your head. But we watched the TED Talk and he said Scrum in it. And they were like, "What's Scrum?" And I was like, I I don't know, but it sounds pretty good. Let's go scrum it out. Like, what does that mean? Because next time I do it with my kids, when they ask me what's scrum, I hope my answer is I don't know, but let's scrum it out. So what
Yeah,
is
so there is this role in software development, and now it's going into other businesses too and industry, but there's a role called the Scrum Master.
Ooh.
So you could actually be a Scrum Master. There's a certificate. I actually am a certified Scrum Master myself.
let's go.
Yeah, so it comes from rugby. So you're like, what's a Scrum? So if you know rugby, the Scrum, they get into their Scrum,
Uh-huh.
and they move. I don't play rugby. I feel like disclaimer, if I butcher this, it's because I don't play rugby.
Neither do we, so we'll just
Right.
agree with what you say.
I'll just act like I know what I'm talking about. The way I understand the sport is that they get into that huddle and they have to like move the ball forward and it's really aggressive and like, yeah. So I imagine the same to be true of project work. It's very team oriented. You have your team and your strengths, and together you're going to move the work forward or the ball, right?
Yeah.
So that's like that's the term Scrum. It comes from rugby. It is a result of basically they wanted to get rid of waterfall project management, and that is where you do all your project planning up front, everything up until the end of it, right? Like every little detail is planned out. And then workers go and do what they're supposed to do. Well, turns out they're not communicating to different departments. Things go awry. People are buggy. Like we forget to communicate. We drop the ball sometimes, and that can drop other balls because people are dependent on you. And so they were like, there's got to be a better way. Our projects are not coming in on time and they're not coming in on budget. And so essentially some executives in the industry came together, they had a retreat and they said there's got to be a better way, and that's when they came up with the Agile Manifesto.
Oh.
I know. Doesn't it sound wild? You're like, oh cool. And then yeah, so you'll Google that later, but
This is an incredible journey. Like, I totally, in my mind, when you're talking about the Scrum and you're talking about the waterfall, I think I grew up in a waterfall system in school, right? Like, here's your assignments, here's the plan. We're gonna go through unit, chapter, page, go do it, come back, and yeah, exactly, And then I love what you said about this Scrum and the cyclical portion of the instruction that way, because I think as educators it's hard to find the time to confer with kids and conference with kids, not just about academics but behaviors that lead to success. And it sounds like that is just an incredible way to intentionally give ourselves time to slow down and get those kids the message of here's what it takes to be successful.
Yeah, and that's one of the sort of tools in your toolkit, your Agile toolkit is a time box. Like you time box time to have those conversations. And that's the framework. And what you put in that framework, how you go about it is up to you, the teacher, right?
Yeah.
And if you do have teams, so in your 4th grade and your 5th grade, or whatever class, like it really can be any level. It's, in my mind, it's PK-12. It just depends on how much scaffolding you have or not. But eventually you get to this sort of self-managing, teams that know what to do. And you really do get to be that guide on the side. So instead of working with, 22, 28 individuals, you are now working with like 5 teams that you can go around and check in on them and their progress. And it's very visible. So I like, actually, you can kind of see mine. I have my own. I call them Scrum boards. It's, people have different words for it. But it's a simple to do, doing, and done. So if the listeners are people not watching the video, it's basically like a whiteboard or a chart paper with, those 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. And so kids visibly can see what's on deck. They know what they're prioritized. So the most important tasks go up top. And then the one that they're focused on. So this is really good for kids that need support focusing on like that one thing. They take their sticky note to the doing, and then they do it. And then if they have issues on that, that's when those check-ins are really helpful. It'd be like, okay, are there misconceptions? What's your roadblock to success? In fact, Scrum Masters are called impediment crushers. So it's like thinking of teachers in a different light. We're not just teachers, we're impediment crushers. What's stopping you from success? Is it something, maybe you don't understand the content, maybe you didn't sleep last night very well. Like there's all sorts of impediments that we can like figure out in a much better way when you kind of organize your class like this.
Hey, can you just show us that board again? I know that people listening won't see it, but it's to do, done, or to do, doing, done.
Doing, and done.
I absolutely love that, because when we think about kids that have executive functioning delays, that is such a great way to help them start to organize, what do I need to do right now? I know you said it, but I'm thinking like in my 5th grade class, how can I help my kids with what they should be doing? And what an awesome idea. My chart is already filled, so keep dropping knowledge on us on what's going on. I'm also curious too, because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think like when you go into education, you're not just dropped in this role. How did you get here? Like what brought you to where you are now?
Technically, my first teaching gig was in Costa Rica. And that was by default. Like I didn't really, like, I needed a job. How do I want to put this? I tried hard not to be an educator. My parents were both educators. My dad was a principal and my mom was a math and science teacher. And then she went on to become a consultant, and then a tech director, if you will. And so I did not want to be like that. So I tried to like not go that path. And so I went into like health sciences and biology, and I thought I was going to be a conservation biologist and save the world. Like that was like what I thought. And then I moved to Costa Rica, and I could not find a job in conservation biology. It's all in who you know, and it's a very like limited, like they don't have a million positions open, like all those things you find out. And then the first job I could get was teaching. I thought, well, that'll be fun. And it was, like, I laugh, but like it was the best experience ever and I just, so I can relate to you, I had 3rd, 4th, 7th, 8th, and a 9th grade class. So if you can imagine, I got thrusted into, and I did not have any formal teaching training. So I'm going to call this, and I actually use this term a lot in my professional learning, immersion training. This was immersion learning for me. So I had no formal training. I had to learn by doing. I had to get smart real fast. And I had to pivot a lot because like certainly I made a lot of mistakes that year. And I had to lean into my colleagues like on best practices and things like that. I didn't even know there were best practices. You know what I mean? Like you go into it and you're like, oh, like creating a token society was a good idea and it said inception, but then it became about the token and not the learning, and then everything went awry. Like I did the classic rookie mistake, like
Yes.
penguin dollars, all the kids wanted them. But yeah, so that is kind of, so I started there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. I had to call my mom up. I'm like, you were right, like I love it, it's a great profession. And I went back to school, university, got my master's in teaching, became a science teacher. I was middle school. I learned that I am not an elementary teacher in my immersion. So bless your hearts. But people will tell me bless my heart for being a middle, like some people are like, oh, middle school, no way. But like I loved it. Like I love middle school. But
That's what Josh and I say too. No way. We couldn't do middle school for if our lives depended on it, probably.
anger, drama.
All of it. All
Yeah.
of it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I thrive in the middle school environment. But so I did that for a couple of years, teaching, and the whole being a yes person and those little opportunities. One thing led to another. Our state has this Iowa, the Iowa STEM Council, and they do these like award dollars. Like they have these essentially grants that you can apply for. And so it was like the first year of the council, like in its existence. And so they gave out 3 STEM awards, and my middle school classroom was a recipient. And so it was for redesigning learning environments. So we got, if I remember correctly, it was like something around $50,000 to like redesign your learning environment. So we worked with the AEA, which I work for now, and kind of got a plan together. We put like, monitors on all the walls, tables that had writable tops, just lots of ways to visualize learning in the room, and the tech for it. So, and iPads for all the kids that could cast to the monitors and things like that. It was wild. Like it was really cool. And so that, I think, put a spotlight on the work I was doing with like project-based learning and integrating technology, and like what does a redesigned learning environment look like. And so I got to share that story at different conferences, and then you meet people and they're like, wow, like you should do this for our AEA. And so I'm like, okay. So I got that job, and then in that job I got a chance to share my like how I think school could go a little bit more. And then I started kind of sharing that story, getting some other change agents, like getting a team going on, like we all believe like, oh, we could do better. And so working with authentic learning projects, so projects with community partners, PK-12. So what's a real problem or a real challenge that your business, industry, community, organization is having that my kids can work on, and I can connect it to the curriculum goals. So getting rid of the worksheet and bringing in something that like really authentic to the community or to that business. And so that led to, so it was like the stepping, like this pitch for a statewide project board. We did it with Google form, like we use a Google form and had a spreadsheet of like all these community projects that I was trying to bring to schools and like implement into classrooms as a consultant. And that idea, full circle, like came back to the STEM Council. They were like, oh my gosh, we should do this. Got Future Ready Iowa funding dollars to basically pay for this like digital project board for the state. And so that I got a job at our statewide AEA, called AEA Learning Online. And so that's where I'm at still. And so my role has really been to work with community partners to develop the resources and things to support authentic projects in the classroom. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
So, so I guess my question then would be, where you're at now, do you help bridge that gap for authentic learning to happen in classrooms? Because I sit here as a teacher and think about, I want that to happen in my classroom, right? But my time's so limited with everything that I have to do. How can I be asked to do any more than I'm doing? Like
Right.
how do we help bridge that gap? Is that your role, or where do we look to help find that gap or bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think that's what it's about is like everybody wants that. Like no teacher is going to say, I don't want to do that really cool fun project that my kids will love and like learn things. Like no one's going to say no to that. It's about time, resources, and just like knowing, right? So the first challenge is to streamline awareness, right? Like to even know that that opportunity is there for your kids. And so that's like the very basic thing that I do is help schools kind of work with their community partners to develop a district level project board. And you can tag projects by grades. And so you as the teacher can just go right to your laptop and search your grade level and see what projects are available. In fact, you guys, anyone who's listening to this can go to the Iowa Clearinghouse for Work-Based. We call it the Clearinghouse for Work-Based Learning. I don't like saying work-based learning because that doesn't sound fun. Work doesn't sound fun,
Sounds
but
like
it
a
is.
job.
Yeah, but it sneakily is work-based. I mean, it is because you're exposing kids to real careers, real thinking, real processes that are authentic to that job or that role. So it is, I mean, it's both project-based learning and work-based learning, and it's like the marriage of the two. But yeah, you can go to that website and you can search projects and get inspiration and bring them back to your own communities. It's public facing, so lots of good inspiration there for you guys. And we've had
One more time. I'm sorry.
so do you want the website?
Please.
Yeah, so I can say it out loud. So if people are like, "Oh yeah, I'll write that down." The website to see the project board is wbl.futurereadyiowa.gov/listings. And there you can find statewide projects, but then I encourage you to click on the district project boards. The one I showcase a lot is Boone Community School District. They've worked really hard to work with their community partners to populate all the local projects available to kids.
Very cool.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely like tap into that. And if I'll throw that out there, like happy to share and collaborate on that. But yeah, I think having a tool to connect teachers to opportunities so they don't have to go out and find them is going to save you time. And then another thing that I do both in my day job and my sort of like extracurricular job, if you will, is professional learning, where I bring supports to help teachers. And it kind of ranges, like if you're interested, like I want to make a project, well, I have supports that I can help you develop a project that's aligned to your standards that you're trying to meet, all the way to those agile protocols and ways to support kids in those conversations, or to plan and vision and map out their projects, to create their project backlogs. That's another term from Agile that you might hear, backlogs. So
Backlogs.
yeah, and then a sprint backlog is sort of a chunk of the big backlog. So you might have kind of your big ideas, but we're going to chunk it in a manageable way. We're going to take that first learning chunk. Maybe a sprint is a week long. You're going to take a week's worth of tasks essentially, and then bring them down to your to-do. And that's what kids are going to focus on, is that to-do for that learning sprint. So Monday, you might be planning, and you could be co-planning with kids, or kids that are there and ready. They can start to plan their own, like how they're going to go about these tasks. So maybe Monday you plan, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're doing, they're getting it done. You're problem solving, you're figuring out what they know, what they don't know, and giving them real-time personalized supports. And then maybe on Friday, let's look at the work we've done. Let's give each other feedback on it. Let's review the quality of the art. Maybe you're building that, tower of spaghetti, and you're like, we learned something about foundation. You need a good foundation to support our structure. And so maybe that's something you talk about in the review. And then in the retro, you might say, Susie would not share the spaghetti sticks. And I really didn't like that because I didn't feel like I got to do anything. So then now it becomes visible, like what the issues are. And, okay, well, next time, so the iterative process, next time on our planning, we're going to put a goal on there that we're going to be better at sharing. And we're going to make sure we check in on that goal throughout the week. Like, are we doing a better job this week? So you can kind of see how that continuous improvement they're just going to get better and better at working together because they've had the chance to have that talk,
It's not just academic, it's social, emotional, it's whole person, right? Like nobody
Yes.
wants to work with somebody who doesn't share the noodles. And so you gotta, right? So you got, I love that that's incorporated in some of that reflection piece. Laura, your passion is just like your fire is just present, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. One of the things that's tough in education is like we go through tough times, and some people don't talk about them. And sometimes, like if you're a teacher and you're struggling, or you're not really feeling it a day or two, or maybe a week, or it's been a month that you've really been down, it's tough. And you're so positive. Has there ever been a time where you've questioned yourself or questioned your practice, or like, what am I doing?
I think that's normal, right? I think the way I handle those ruts, or like feeling of like, oh, like I'm spinning. For me, it's about the pivot step. Like, okay, this is not whatever it is, like it's not working for me. Or maybe I know it's not working for who I'm, like the kids or the teachers that I'm working with. Like it's all about the pivot step. So if it's not working, or you think there's more for you, then what is that? And then take that next best step towards it. And so I think that keeps me more positive, knowing like, no, I'm in control. Like I can navigate through this. Whether it's a, change in, so for me, I had a few career kind of changes, right? Well, part of it's like, I've done what I can here. I need to go somewhere new. Like that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's that saying, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I keep that at the forefront, like, oh no, let's try a different thing. And so I think that keeps it interesting. I think you got to keep that, like, it's like the spice of life. Like you have to kind of mix it up. Have you guys seen, I'm just going to bring random show up. Have you guys seen Shrinking? It's so good. Harrison Ford is in it, and yeah, you just got to see it. But it's a psychological like technique they talk about in the show called a boop.
Okay.
And if
I do that with my dog sometimes, like boop.
Yeah, like a boop, but it's like a boop in your behavior. Like if things are like stale and just you can't get it to change, you gotta boop. So you gotta mix it. Like I take it like, oh, you gotta mix it up. So what's that total change in direction, just to like mix things up? I think that's really helpful.
I'm writing that down. Boop and behavior.
Boop behavior.
I love the boop and behavior. Like we're talking right now about like behavior, and I've been in a tough point since probably January.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to, I feel like I keep talking to my kids like, hey, here's what you're doing, here's how we can change it. How are you feeling in this? But then they go back to it. And we need a little boop. Like we need to mix it up.
Change the scene, change the, just flip something that's been like a norm, like boop.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen anymore. We gotta boop it up.
There you go. Great show. I highly recommend. So
Hey, going off script too, you talked about penguin dollars for a second.
Don't even go there. No, I'm just kidding.
He's taking all the notes. Josh has all the notes.
Oh, it's full. I'm just curious for like teachers that are just getting into education, and like economy classrooms are how you do it. Like, how do we, and if you run an economy classroom, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing.
There's a wrong and a right way to do it. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
how I feel too. I think that there are always two ways to everything. So I'm curious, like, how do we get away though from the wrong way of doing penguin dollars or dojos or classroom dollars or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And how do we? So I'm going to ask you like a super loaded question now.
Oh no.
Like, how do we get away from that and help kids learn to grow emotionally, socially, academically? But what happens too if it's not supported at home?
Right. I think that is, that's why we're all here, is like knowing that probably about 40% of our kids are going to be just fine, like without us. Like they're going to be fine because they've got, great mentors at home, right, to help guide them. But it's that 60% of kids, and I use that because that's a roughly like national standards of like kids that go on to post-secondary success. Like 60% do not. Like by definition of, did they go to college? Did they find an apprenticeship? Did they go on to anything? A tech school, like, and 60% do not go to anything. They don't finish, like they might enroll, but they don't finish. And so it's like, how do we, I think the real question is, how do we provide learning in such a way that we give kids the knowledge they need about different paths that are available to them to know what they like and to know what they don't like? And how do we do that in school, knowing that most of them are not going to get it at home? And so I answer that question with authentic learning. I think giving kids these authentic, real challenges with an area partnership. So that's a different level of engagement. When a stranger walks in, that's an engineer that like builds switchgear or helps problem solve switchgear. What's a switchgear? Like that's just interesting, right? Who's this new? It's a boop. It's a new person coming in and telling you something wild that you've never heard of before, and you may or may not really like it, which is okay. I think that's part of it too, is like not every project is for every kid, and that's where we can get creative and like, okay, like what are you interested in and how can we connect our learning goals to that? I think that's where you teach kids passion for learning, and that it's okay to be passionate for learning, and where you don't need to give them the penguin dollar to work on like coding a Fitbit. Like you could use, if they're interested in computer science and you have to teach some math standards, well, algorithms are a great way to do that, and teaching them how to like make their own fit, like how wild is that? But fun and very relevant, because that's going to be the future. Like most jobs will be related to that. So I guess that's where I'm at. Like that, I think there's many solutions to this problem, but that's how I'm tackling it. Like that's how I see how we might tackle that issue. So coming up with your 5th, 4th grade, project boards where you might have so like you have a visible opportunity board with, project A, B, C, and D. And hey, which one most excites you? Like, what are you interested? Like giving them that autonomy to choose their project is really helpful.
I think that autonomy is huge, and I love that you said, that you have to find what kids are interested in, so it's not just dependent on the penguin dollar. To switch gears again, you're writing a book, and I can't wait for this book to come out. And would you just talk to us a little bit about the journey that you've been on with this book? I'm really interested in it. You've just been so incredible about explaining how to disrupt learning and how it looks with partnerships. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm working on a book. I'm so excited. I feel like I've been working on this forever, but it's really only been about, I mean, the idea has been in my brain for like years, and it's finally like manifesting itself. And so I started working on it, really got motivated to like get it pen to paper kind of thing this past year. Some things happened in my life that like just really lit a fire in me, and so that was what I wanted to do, is to write this book. And so on the hunt for publishers, like, you know, debating like, should I self-publish, like, or should I get a publisher? And I'm like, well, so you kind of look around, like you see the lay of the land. And um the one that most stood out to me was Codebreaker EDU. So Brian Espinal is the sort of founder of that publishing company. They do a lot of other things as well, like professional learning and speaking and things like that. So I actually like Twitter. That was how I got connected to that, is the Twitterverse.
Yeah, amazing.
So, and I really liked a lot of the stuff I was seeing, really relevant stuff. And so, you know, it's like, and I was saying this to you before the show started, but like the universe, kind of talks to you at times in your life. And so, this whole book thing and sort of all the changes in my life, like leading me to where I am right now, even on this podcast with you guys, like everything for a reason. And, so last year, 2022, I was like, I'm doing it. I want to follow my wild heart, and I want to I want to do this. Like, this is what I want. But I wasn't always like that. I've always been open-minded and like, yes, and kind of like follow my instincts, if you will. But I've been sitting on these things I've been really wanting to do. And in 2021, I had a horrible, like, this is the sad part, and I will get us through gracefully, hopefully. I had some sad things in my life and happened that year. I had 2 miscarriages, which is really sad if you're trying to make a family. I do have a daughter. She's a miracle, and like I know that more than ever now. She's 4, so I want to change education for her. But my stepdad, during this time, so like miscarriage number 2 happened, and then my stepdad, suddenly got sick, and we didn't know like going into it, but he ended up passing away like 2 weeks from when we found out he wasn't well, and he was 66. Come on, 66, like that is nothing. Like, we were not ready for it. It was absolutely heartbreaking and traumatic for me, and I don't think had ever experienced like such pain in life. I'm an empathizer. I get really sad when really sad things happen to people I love. Like, it like really affects me, but like I've never like experienced that kind of like pain. And so I went to kind of a dark place for a while. I know you guys said I'm so positive, and I really am. And like, it was just kind of a bad place for me. And, for whatever reason, I, needed to get out of that. And actually, this is kind of a side note story that I talk about in the book, but, when I was like needed to get out of that lull, I saw a sundog. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, little rainbow.
Yeah, in the like a winter rainbow with the ice crystals. And I saw one, and I was just like, that was the first time I felt like something magical happened. And it kind of like, oh, well, that I'd never seen one. I've always wanted to see one. So it like brought me some joy, like out of nowhere, like seeing this thing. And I thought, okay, maybe maybe I need to like snap out of this. Like, life is beautiful. Like, look at this sundog. And if I didn't think it was the universe speaking to me, 2 days later, I saw another sundog. And so I Googled sundogs, like, how does that happen? Like, I'm a science teacher by trade, but I was like, I don't really quite know how that works. And so I wanted to know how that worked, to make the halo like that and all that. And so in my journey of searching on Google, like what is this sundog about? You find like symbolisms of sundogs, like through history and like culture. And it means like transformation. A new beginning was going to happen. And so I was like, oh, goosebumps. Like they're like the universe is that those sundogs were for me.
It's not going to let
And
you
so
miss them. There was 2 of them. It's not
there
going to
was
let you.
two. Yeah, I was kind of doubting it, but then there was another one. So I'm like, okay. And so that kind of fired me up a little bit. And like a few weeks or within that time period, that's when I saw some post on Twitter with Brian and Codebreaker, and it was like talking about Canada, and I'm like, oh, they're Canadian. My stepdad who passed away was Canadian, and I'm like, I gotta go for them. Like I was kind of thinking about it, but then so I just threw it out there. Like I connected, and we ended up meeting, and we had our meeting. Like I think it was like, gosh, November is when I signed anyway. And so I didn't want to like pitch to them until I had some substantial writing done. So all summer I kind of like put it together and then pitched it to them. And then yeah, so now I can see the finish line. I'm almost there and I can't wait. It's a blessing and a curse to write a book if anyone's listening.
Well, we can't wait to listen to it. And I've heard the term sundog, never knew what it was.
You Google it.
Now I'm gonna be on the lookout for it.
Yeah, they're really cool. Like it's very neat to see one, I guess. Like it's out of nowhere. You're like, what? It's like a winter rainbow, but to me, I think they're rare just because I'd never seen one before until then.
Well, and I think that is a great place. We'll have to talk more about sundogs off there.
I think there's lots of room for more conversations later.
But after hearing that story about your stepdad and your sundogs and what's happened since then, hearing your journey in education, I gotta know, like, what do we need to do in this world to make it a better place? Like what does the world need right now?
This is the hardest question. I really thought through this because of the, your title, the podcast. I think if push comes to shove, the one thing I think we need is trust. Like trust in each other, and to remember we are all human and we all want something, right? Like we all have something that burns inside of us. So, I always talk about following your wild heart, and like I believe that so many times, because we didn't vocalize it, because it wasn't visible, it's like the unspoken things that had they come to surface, we could have rallied together more, we could have gotten more things done. So it's kind of that, let's put trust in each other, let's work as a team, let's figure out what our mission, what's your banner, like what are you carrying with you forward, and find those like-minded individuals and have trust in them, and let's do something amazing. Like I think if we can use our people power to do that, and that's like the crux, right? That's the crux of what authentic learning is. Like working with other people, networking, growing your own network, understanding what's out there for you, and having trust in people to take that leap, to take risks. I think that's, if I had to boil it down, I'm gonna have to put my money on the trust. So,
Laura, that is so refreshing on so many levels. Like that trust and finding your people and moving forward and changing the world. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, very cool.
I feel like you guys are like, we have the same banner, like the fact that we're taking our time, like we're taking our time to have this conversation, I think that matters, and we're rooting out what we're rooting for. I think that's really important.
Laura, thank you so much. This has been just an absolute joy, pleasure, all of the good things. Like, and it's definitely been a boop in my week because
you're gonna remember it
forever. Totally. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you again from both of us. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took your time to listen.
Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives, and hopefully what the world needs now is helping you to sustain your inspiration as we journey through this school year together.
We hope that as you head out, you remember that the biggest factor that plays into student success is you. Your love, your passion, your empathy, your dedication is exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for all you do. Have a good one.